We live in interesting times. Today's stories. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador says Mexico will not detain migrants at the U.S. border. A Russian farm community fights the mental health stigma. Khashoggi's fiancé says the U.S. has a moral responsibility to seek justice. Texas border station closed after a teen's death. U.S. border chief quits amid outcry over child detainees. Chilean former arms manufacturer faces justice after a U.S. extradition request. Plus, 2019 Warrior Games. Archery competition hits the bullseye. Hello everyone, I'm Anna Kui, bringing you stories from around the globe, and this is Eagle News, broadcasting from Las Vegas. Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said the 15,000 troops his government has deployed to the U.S. border do not have orders to stop migrants from crossing and vows to investigate a controversial detention.
Puede ser que haya estos excesos, pero la instrucción que tienen todos es de que se respeten los derechos humanos de los migrantes. Y eso va a continuar. No existe ninguna orden en ese sentido. Y vamos a revisar el caso, que no suceda, porque no es esa nuestra función. Tenemos nosotros que evitar, ¿sí?, pero respetando derechos humanos, que aumente el flujo migratorio.
He made the comment after an AFP journalist images of heavily armed National Guardsmen forcibly detaining two women and a young girl at the edge of the Rio Grande River triggered backlash in Mexico, whose government faces pressure from U.S. President Donald Trump to slow a surge of Central American migrants. The statement contradicts what López Obrador's own defense minister said Monday in a joint press conference with the president. Asked whether the National Guardsmen and Army troops recently deployed to Mexico's northern border were detaining migrants to prevent them from crossing, Defense Minister Luis Crescencio Sandoval replied, yes. Sandoval said, quote, given that undocumented migration is not a crime, but rather an administrative violation, we simply detain them and turn them over to immigration authorities. However, López Obrador insisted Mexican forces were not there to detain migrants who tried to cross the border. He said, those are not the instructions they have. They are not there to do that job. That is the work of the migration authorities, not the army. He said, quote, we are going to deal with this matter so that no abuses are committed. However, he added, quote, we have to avoid a confrontation with the government of the United States. López Obrador, an anti-establishment leftist who came to office in December vowing to protect migrants' rights, has been pushed into a more hardline stance by Trump, who threatened last month to impose tariffs on all Mexican goods if the government did not do more to slow migration. After a week of tense negotiations in Washington, the two sides announced a deal on June 7 in which Mexico agreed to reinforce its southern border with 6,000 National Guardsmen and expand its policy of taking back migrants while the U.S. processes their asylum claims. At a farm outside St. Petersburg, a group of people with mental disabilities are working in a bakery, a barn, and a dairy, a rare case of integration in Russia where mental health issues face a strong stigma. 18 Russians with learning disabilities live and work on the Svetlana farm, which is a dairy and bakery where residents do daily chores and therapy.
Это задача деревни – максимально включить наших подопечных, называемых ласково ребята, в жизнь, в обычную жизнь. То, чтобы, может быть, там в 19 веке они бы сделали у себя дома в деревне, если бы жили, да, когда большинство людей были крестьяне, они бы что-то делали, что-нибудь готовили, там подметали, убирали, ухаживали бы за скотиной, это было бы естественно. А сейчас, чтобы такую жизнь вести, нам пришлось вот специально что-то организовывать.
It's a rare example in Russia of people with special needs being integrated into the local community, as most remain hidden from view in outdated state institutions left over from Soviet times. The farm opened more than 25 years ago in a village 130 kilometers or 80 miles from Russia's second city, St. Petersburg. It's a part of an international residential communities movement founded by an Austrian pediatrician in 1939. The Camp Hill movement provides educational and employment support for adults with learning disabilities and other special needs around the world. At Svetlana, residents with various types of learning disabilities, including Down syndrome, lead an outdoorsy life on the farm with help from 5 teachers and 3 volunteers. In sharp contrast to conditions at state-run homes, they live together in spacious houses where they have separate bedrooms and share living rooms, dining rooms, and kitchens. Most Svetlana residents are sent to live on the farm for long periods by their families or guardians and contribute towards their costs, which are mostly met by charity and state donations.
Для ребят это улучшение качества жизни, потому что они попадают в коллектив, у них есть общение, у них есть занятость, то есть они действительно работают и очень быстро втягиваются и начинают к своей работе гордиться, они ее любят.
Для ребят большое событие, когда вообще мы там к ним приезжаем, вместе с ними играем, вместе с ними что-то делаем. И более того, я должен сказать, что это помогает и не только ребятам, потому что, глядя на них, по-другому переоцениваешь, в общем, и себя, и окружающих вокруг.
According to official figures, 160,000 people with learning difficulties still live in state institutions in Russia that have a dire reputation. Under communism, authorities encouraged isolating people with learning disabilities who were considered unfit for work to such places. Living conditions in the facility sharply deteriorated during the economic crisis following the fall of the USSR in 1990. Despite significant improvements since then, they continue to be a matter of concern for human rights activists. In 2015, a fire killed 23 mostly elderly patients of a residential home in southwest Russia. 2 years earlier, 2 other fires in the same type of institution killed almost 80 people. According to campaigners for reforms and rights groups, standard state residential centers have hundreds of people crammed together in dormitories, often under-supervised and with limited opportunities to train for employment. The Turkish fiancé of a murdered Saudi journalist and dissident Jamal Khashoggi insists in an emotional interview that Washington has the moral responsibility to initiate an international investigation into his killing.
İşte ülkesinden ayrıldıktan sonra Türkiye'de gelebilirdi. Biliyorsunuz Türkiye'deki ilişkileri çok iyiydi. Ama buna rağmen Amerika'yı seçmiş olması Amerika'nın siyasi anlamdaki gücüne güvendiği anlamına geliyor. O yüzden Amerika'nın üzerine düşen görevi hem siyasi hem hukuki hem de ahlaki olarak yapması gerekiyor. Yani bunu açıklaması çok kolay bir şey değil. Bu gerçekten...
Khashoggi, a Washington Post contributor and U.S. resident, was killed last October 2nd by Saudi agents while at Saudi Arabia's consulate in Istanbul to obtain paperwork ahead of his wedding to Hatice Cengiz. Speaking to AFP on the sidelines of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, the 36-year-old Turkish scholar described her growing desperation as she stood outside the consulate and waited for her fiancé to emerge in vain.
Yani kötü bir şeylerin olduğunu düşündüm ama hiç böyle bir şeyin olduğunu düşünmemiştim. Yani aklıma acaba Cemal'in korktuğu şeyler mi geldi başına ya da ne bileyim onun tutuklanması ya da bir şekilde acaba ülkesine götürülmeye çalışılıyor mu gibi bir takım düşünceler geldi ama
She said she suspected that Khashoggi, a harsh critic of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, was experiencing some of the things he had feared. With tears flowing down her cheeks and dripping into her silk hijab, she said she clung for months to the hope that the man she had planned to marry and whose body has not been found might be alive. But she said she had come to accept the truth. He was violently murdered and massacred. Her comments came after the UN Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Summary or Arbitrary Executions, Agnes Callamard, released a damning report last week that found credible evidence linking Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to the killing. The independent rights expert, who does not speak for the United Nations but reports her findings to it, called on UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to initiate an international criminal investigation into the case. Coming up, a Texas border station closed after a teen's death. U.S. border chief quits amid outcry over child detainees. Chilean former arms manufacturer faces justice after a U.S. extradition request. Eagle News will return in a moment. Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News. Officials said a major Texas border station has been temporarily closed due to a fever outbreak, one day after a Guatemalan teenager diagnosed with flu at the facility died in immigration custody. Medical staff imposed a quarantine at the McAllen Processing Center after a large number of detainees were found to have high fevers and symptoms of a flu-related illness. Referring to the Central Processing Center, Customs and Border Protection said in a statement late Tuesday, to avoid the spread of illness, the Rio Grande Valley sector has temporarily suspended intake operations at the CPC. Medical staff are currently working to provide all subjects with proper medical treatment. It said people detained in Rio Grande Valley will be held in other stations until the situation is resolved. A 16-year-old boy died Monday in immigration custody in Texas, becoming the fifth child from Guatemala to die since December after being apprehended by U.S. Border Patrol agents. According to U.S. media reports, the boy, identified as Carlos Gregorio Hernandez Vasquez, had been detained on May 13 after crossing the border and was processed at the McAllen Center. He was seen by a nurse who determined he had the flu and moved to a nearby facility at West Laco to avoid other detainees getting sick. He was found unresponsive Monday during a welfare check, an hour after agents had last checked on him. The Border Patrol agency has come under intense scrutiny in recent months over its treatment of children apprehended at the border. Border enforcement officials earlier this year said the country's immigration system had reached a breaking point of illegal border crossings that have overwhelmed the system, especially in the Rio Grande Valley. Almost 500,000 people have been stopped at the southern U.S. border since October. Most who cross without authorization surrender to authorities and file for asylum. Overcrowding at emergency shelters has forced authorities to release some migrants from detention as they await a review of their asylum applications. The McAllen Center is one of the busiest along the U.S.-Mexican border. The acting head of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency announced his resignation on Tuesday amid a public outcry over alarming detention conditions of migrant children in Texas. John Sanders, appointed to the post just 2 months ago, said in a letter obtained by several U.S. media outlets that he planned to step down as acting CBP commissioner on July 5. Sanders' departure coincides with the revelation of unsanitary detention conditions for children at an overcrowded Border Patrol facility in Clint, Texas, a sign of the increasing strain on resources due to soaring numbers of arrests at the U.S.-Mexico border. The conditions at the center in Clint were described by a team of lawyers, doctors, and others who visited the facility about 20 miles southeast of El Paso. Nearly 250 children were transferred out of Clint on Monday, but a CBP official said Tuesday that about 100 were being sent back there. Clara Long, a researcher with Human Rights Watch who accompanied the team, wrote, "The 3-year-old before me had matted hair, a hacking cough, muddy pants, and eyes that fluttered closed with fatigue. Children at Clint told us they don't have regular access to showers or clean clothes, with some saying they hadn't been allowed to bathe over periods of weeks and don't have regular access to soap," she said. Sanders has led CBP since April, when President Donald Trump tapped CBP Chief Kevin McAleenan to replace Kirstjen Nielsen as Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Accused of illegally importing U.S. zirconium into Chile for manufacturing cluster bombs sold to Iraq, controversial Chilean businessman Carlos Carduan speaks to the press for the first time while facing an extradition process requested by the United States.
Feliz porque en 26 años de una persecución absolutamente injusta, de la cual soy totalmente inocente y que vamos a demostrar, he podido enfrentarme a nuestra justicia para poder defenderme por primera vez en 26 años. Aquí estoy, pecho al frente, confiado en la justicia y con la frente en alto para defender mi honor y el de mi familia. ¿Me traiciona Estados Unidos? ¿De las cámaras, por favor?
¿Está las cámaras?
Estados Unidos está haciendo imputaciones falsas. Gracias.
When we come back, 2019 Warrior Games. Archery competition hits the bullseye. Eagle News will be right back. This is Eagle News. I'm Anna Kui. For EBC Sports, let's join Jay Rosquitas at the 2019 Warrior Games in Tampa, where the archery competition hits the bullseye. Take a look.
As the Warrior Games hit the halfway mark, the archery finalists took aim and shot for the bullseye, the gold medal. The competition, which begun on Monday with the prelims, was made up of 5 categories: individual compound and recurve open visually impaired, individual compound open, individual recurve open, team compound, and team recurve. Combined men and women competitors also had the option to shoot bows from a standing or seated position. Though an individual sport, archery in the Warrior Games allowed different armed forces to join as a team.
Coming from non-archers, it was very stiff for us.
All 3 of us, it's the first time we've picked up a compound.
We're not even joking. Literally 4 days ago was the first time all 3 of us picked up a compound bow.
Yeah.
And I'm going to flat out brag, but we just hit 199 for our team effort.
Yeah.
Out of.
We can hold our own.
So I think we can. I think if we started dialing in a bit more, we're going to give it a good crack next time.
For the winners in the team category, it was a first for some.
This is the first time that Navy's won a medal for team rounds, and when we did, we got the gold medal, so it means a lot.
It means a lot because this was the team sport. It was something we didn't even know was happening. So I found out like yesterday afterwards that we did it, and I don't know, it was just really overwhelming, I guess, that I was good enough to make the team.
During the announcements of the winners, there was a sudden second-place tie between Marine Corps and Army in the team compound category. So, they battled one last time for a shootout to see who would place second. And Marine Corps came out and took the silver medal.
Yeah, that was terrifying because since we only got one arrow, like every arrow mattered like so much, and I was just kind of like, this one really counts, like don't screw up. And I shot and somehow I hit dead center and it worked, and then my coach screamed and I don't really remember anything else, and then we won it, so it worked.
The finalists also shared their experience with archery and how it took them to new levels in the Warrior Games.
The amount of pressure that you end up feeling on yourself, you're trying to do the best that you can. At the same time, you got to stay calm so you can keep your aim steady. And it's a very precise, shot. You're trying to hit an X about the size of a quarter from 20 yards away. It's quite difficult.
Warrior Games is amazing, like the amount of team spirit and everything. I'm a very competitive person, and having something like this to work towards has actually completely saved my life. This was my first year at Warrior Games, and it was just amazing to see your hard work pays off.
We just come out here, we understand that we've been through a lot, and it doesn't matter what team, what country. We know you've worked hard to get to where you are, so we help each other, kind of make it through it. And that's what it means, why it means so much to me. It's, archery saved my life, and Warrior Games has definitely saved my life. And, being able to be out here, I know I'm not the only one, so I get to share that with all my brothers and sisters out here.
Stay locked on Eagle News as we bring to you more coverage from the 2019 Warrior Games. I'm Jay Rasquitas, always 1 with 25.
Thanks, Jay. That is today's Eagle News. Join us tomorrow for stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at eaglenews.net and eaglenewslive.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/eaglenews and on facebook.com/eaglenews. Thank you for watching. I'm Anna Cui, and I'm 1 with 25.